Welcome to Journey Unto You. My name is Lorraine, and I am your host. I am privileged to be here with you. On this platform, we will explore all things autism and other subjects and needs within the community. I have shared my own personal journey and how it all got started. This platform is for anyone who has had autism on their path. I do hope to encourage you, so get comfortable, take a deep breath, and just listen in. There is hope. Good evening and welcome to Journey Unto You. My name is Lorraine and I am your host. This evening I am very excited to have a special friend of mine who was a part of my journey many years ago. The Lord saw fit to bring into my path, and I'm so blessed by her. Her name is Ranene Royer, and I'd like to welcome her in. Welcome, Ranene.
Thank you so much, Lorraine. Oh, it's so good to be in contact with you. I'm so glad to be here today.
Thank you for joining and taking the time. I know we are in different time zones, and so I want to thank you for squeezing me in your schedule. So, as most of the folks who listen to this podcast know, that this is a podcast related to all things autism and those who have had that on their path. And you have had that on your path.
I have, yes.
Yes, and you are what I would call probably one of the trailblazers. You were one of the ones that was before there was anything, because I know that I was after you, and I felt like for myself as a parent that there weren't really a lot of resources.
Yes.
That has changed tremendously over the years. But having said that, if you wouldn't mind just briefly sharing just a little snippet about yourself, and we'll just kind of pop right into it.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm married with 3 adult children, and my middle daughter has a form of autism. We didn't know that until I was already pregnant with our third. And we lived in Northern California at the time, and currently we live in Southwest Washington. So we've had experience in two different states and dealing with the resources that are available.
Thank you so much. Now, you just said something about being in Washington. Have you been in Washington the whole entire time that you've been that you raised your daughters now that they're adults?
No, we moved when Rosalind is our daughter who's on the spectrum. She was 14 when we moved to Washington.
Okay. So there's so much I hope we get an opportunity to cover. So you have 3 daughters, and Rosalind is the middle daughter.
Yes.
And how old is Rosalind?
She's 31.
Okay. Now, I'm going to kind of go all the way back. You mentioned that you found out that she did have autism after you were pregnant with your third.
Yes.
That is exactly what happened to us as well. I was already pregnant with our third. But tell me, if you can remember, what were the very first, well, let's go back just a little bit. So when you were pregnant, what was her infancy like? The first year?
She seemed to meet the milestones. She was interactive. She had words. She enjoyed animals, playing with our pet dogs. My husband and I both worked, and our 2 oldest girls, the oldest daughter is Brianna, and my second daughter is Rosalind, and they would be alternating at grandmother's house as well as working. So it was a very low stress environment for her. There weren't a lot of other children that she had to deal with. So we had no idea that anything was different with her. She did say a full sentence when she was about 1.5 years, but we did have a difficult birth. When I was pregnant when I was 29, got pregnant with her, gave birth when I was 30. And I remember I did have a depression episode. I was mildly depressed during the pregnancy, but I don't remember. I mean, I know I didn't take any drugs or anything like that for it. I remember seeing a counselor for a little bit. That was the only abnormal thing I think that happened during pregnancy. But in those days, they didn't do the sonograms for every single baby, and so we didn't know what gender she was going to be. And then it was a surprise to the doctor how large she was. She was 9 pounds, 10 ounces, and her sister had been 6 pounds, 15 ounces or something along those lines. And so she was much bigger than what they expected. And she actually got stuck in my birth canal, in the birth canal. Her shoulder got stuck on my pelvic bone. She was already in the birth canal, but she wasn't coming out. And so the doctor had to go in with both hands and pull her out. When she came out, she was a blue baby. She was limp, had blue tinge to her skin. And I remember hearing over the intercom, the hospitals, they called code blue. And the doctors came and they resuscitated her. And then she seemed to be doing fine. And so her APGAR scores later, which were I don't know if they still do those, but those were response scores or tests that they would give newborns to see how they responded to their environment. And at the time they were okay, a little on the low side, but there wasn't anything to be worried about. Looking back after she got her diagnosis, I was looking at her APGAR scores. It's like, oh, okay, we were lower than normal, or what her sisters had been. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't until, so symptoms that I saw later, looking back, hindsight, solace 2020, symptoms that I saw that made me think that I realized that those were symptoms that I didn't realize at the time, was I saw a lot of toe walking. And I used to call her my little ballerina. I didn't know. And then when she was, and then she did have trouble with imaginary play. She did independent play, but she didn't do cooperative play with her older sister or anything like that. And her older sister was very social. So it was just surprising. She was so different. I thought, well, maybe it was just the difference between, different children's personalities. And then when she was 3, we moved. And I remember that our whole house was topsy-turvy with things gone and things items boxed up. And then she just went to the corner and just started screaming and flapping her hands. And I thought, wow, that's really, really interesting. I'd never seen that behavior before. But later on realized, oh, okay, that was very typical because it was just so much sensory overload at the time. Oh, speaking of sensory, she was light sensitive and sound sensitive. I remember Bob and I took her and her older sister to a restaurant, and we had very, very bright lights in that particular restaurant. She just started screaming and screaming. She was still in her car seat or the baby carrier, so I know it was when she was not a year old. And then with sound, on the 4th of July, when there would be fireworks, she would run inside and hide in her room and under the covers in her bed, trying to keep the sound out. So those were very early on markers. And then when she was 3, when we were moving, that's when we first started getting signs. I took her to her 3-year appointment, and I remember it was a physician assistant we met with. I remember telling her, well, she seems a little slower than her older sister. She's a little delayed. And the PA asked Rosalind to draw a smiley face, and Rosalind took the pen and just went scribble, 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 scribble. She didn't do any drawing. And then she wouldn't follow any of the instructions the PA told her to do. And so I said, do you have any recommendations? Like, she wouldn't even dress herself at that point. And the PA said, well, she says, you just need to put the clothes in the room and close the door and tell her to do it. You're just not expecting enough out of her. And I just was laughing to myself. I thought, if I do that, I'm just going to have a naked baby all day. She is not going to put those clothes on. She did prefer to go without clothes. And so I came away from that appointment feeling like the slapped hand, like bad mommy, and I remember laughing with my mother-in-law about it. Like, she was like, no, she wouldn't put her clothes on. It's like, no. So there was no suggestion of autism or anything. But then just 2 weeks later, we put her into a preschool for the first time. And apparently she would run to the corner and wouldn't interact with anyone and would scream and wouldn't talk. And then she hit the teacher. And so she was there for like 3 days. The director called Bob and me in and said, "This is not a good placement for her. You need to seek out special ed." And we're like, "What? What? This is crazy talk." And, but as God would have it, my sister is a teacher and she works with people with disabilities and a lot or learning issues, or she did at the time. And so I called her and I said, "The director said this. Isn't that crazy?" And she was, "Well, I didn't want to say anything, but I was seeing some auditory processing issues with her." And I'm like, "Oh, what? What?" I had no idea. And she didn't know how to broach the subject with me, but it's like, "Oh, okay. Well, I guess that was confirmation that the director wasn't crazy." so, so then we went through the process of getting her and now analyzed or evaluated, I guess, by the local special ed. And they said that she was globally delayed and that she did qualify for special preschool, and special ed preschool was for 3 to 5 year olds. And then, and then they handed me a brochure and they said, "You might want to look into something in the autism spectrum." And that was the first time that autism was mentioned in conjunction with Rosalind. I was like, "What?" And I had gone to college and my minor was in psychology and I had a class in abnormal psychology. And we had a section about autism, but they showed us videos of children spinning around and hitting their head on the wall. And it's like, she was nothing like that. She was a happy-go-lucky little girl, skipped a lot and just loved to run around and, interact with animals. So it didn't seem to coincide with what I had seen in college.
Mm-hmm.
But then after that, we took her to a local pediatrician who, just as God would have it, had experience working with children on the spectrum, which wasn't as popular back then as you know, or wasn't as common, I should say. But he took one look at her and he said, "Well, she's either mentally disabled or she's on the autistic spectrum. So let me refer you to the Oakland Children's Hospital." So we lived in the greater San Francisco Bay Area at that time. And so fortunately we got a referral and we were able to go to an expert in the area. And at the time, she got diagnosed with PDD, which is pervasive developmental disorder, which at that time the DSM had it as one of the branches of autism. It wasn't fully on the autistic spectrum. But he said, but any behavioral modification, anything you get that for people on the spectrum would be helpful to her. And so as she was continuing along, one of the big things that we had was bolting. She was at that special ed preschool and she escaped. She bolted out the door. And fortunately, it was at the same elementary site that her older sister was going. And she ran into the kindergarten room, which her sister was in kindergarten, and just started playing around in the kindergarten room because she wanted to go visit her sister. And so, but that behavior would happen at home. Like if she could escape, I mean, we put locks on the door. We tried to do everything we could for safety first, but sometimes she would just escape and she would just run and run and run and run and run. And there would be no recognition for cars or danger. And so some interventions that we had at the time, there weren't any specific helps for people who were on the spectrum in that area other than special ed. And so I came to find out through my sister being a teacher. She said that you have to get a diagnosis. There's nothing, they won't just offer you what they have. You have to have a diagnosis from a medical professional, and then that will trigger what kind of services you get. And it seemed backwards to me. It's like, no, tell me what services you offer, and then we can pick and see which one's best for our daughter. But it's like, no, it's like the exact opposite of that. This was all very, very, very confusing. And so I went around the area visiting different schools, trying to figure out which one might be the best for her. And we came up with one, and I told the lady at the director of the preschool that that was the best school for my daughter. And she got very angry because it was a private school. And she was like, if you're not happy with this, you have to tell us. We have to go through all these different hoops before you can move on to a different school. Yeah. And it was like, I just felt so discouraged because it was like, it wasn't about what was best for the child. It was about the money that the district had to spend. And it's like, oh, so, so it's okay. We have to go through those hoops. And I remember even calling an attorney at the time because it's like, what, what choices do we have? And they said, nope, you got to do what the school district says. And so we ended up she had to get up on the bus at 6:30 in the morning, ride the bus for an hour to the county school that they had a special preschool class for students on the spectrum, and then an hour ride back. But God knows these things better than I do, and it actually was the best thing for her. I think that she's done as well as she has because she got such good intervention at that school. And I had gone to visit the school, and the teacher was very deadpan when she was speaking to the students. I thought, oh no, Rosalind needs someone who's animated. She does much better with a lot of emotion and verbal fluctuation. But this teacher was very deadpan. And so I thought, no, it's not going to work. But then I found out that the teacher actually just varies her demeanor based on what the child needs. So when she did work with Rosalind, she was very animated. It's like, oh my goodness. And she was amazing. And so when Rosalind was there, they had 6 children and they all became later on integrated into regular ed. And they had a behaviorist, a teacher, and a teacher's assistant. And they all worked so well together. And Rosalind was evaluated and they said that she was moderate to severe at that time. Mm-hmm. So she was, had a lot of behavioral issues.
Mm-hmm. Would you be willing to describe the behavioral issues specifically?
Yes. So I have a clear memory. One of the videotapes they took, because we just had videotapes. We didn't have a video on phones in those days. She was in the playground at the preschool, and she was just standing there screaming at the top of her lungs and stomping her feet and, throwing her fists around. This was when she's 4. And people tried to calm her down to find out what was the matter, and she didn't have any words to say other than just to scream. There's obviously something that upset her, but she had no way of communicating. Mm-hmm. So communication was a big thing. She didn't know. She could say words, but she couldn't really say sentences or express ideas, or she had no way of having a conversation at all. And so she was often on into her own little world. Mm-hmm. And so one of the biggest helps that I got was we eventually were able to get movement therapy for her. Well, we had to pay out of pocket, but the therapist was very kind and gave us a very reduced price. And the big thing she told me is you have to get into her world. So as she would be hopping and skipping around the house, the therapist told me just to start saying, hop, 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 skip, 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 just verbalizing what she was doing. And I'll never forget, like she was skipping in the house and I was going, skip, skip, skip. She just stops, turns and looks at me like shocked that someone was in her world. And so just trying to break into her world. That was what I saw it as, anything I can do, just to walk beside her and mimic her actions. Instead of trying to force her into my world, how about if I try to break into her world? Mm-hmm. And that was really eye-opening for me. She would run away. I couldn't take her I remember taking her to Kmart, and I had a rule. They had to hold on to the basket. And this is when I had our youngest, Stila, was in a car seat that went into the strapping basket. And the other 2 were supposed to hang on to the sides. And then I turn around and she's gone. And I couldn't find her. And I looked all over and had to go to security. And they did their code that they say when a child's missing. Well, she had run to the other side of the store because there was a giant spider that was Halloween and they had decorated with a giant spider. And she loved spiders at that time. And so she had run over there to look at the spider. And so I had to tell the security, don't approach her because she doesn't understand. She would just run away if someone, came up, she would giggle and run away. So techniques I learned with that, I ended up getting a double stroller. So even though she was really too big for a stroller, but that way I could have the younger one and her in the stroller, but having her, if she was contained, then she was okay. But if she had the freedom, then she would bolt. She liked to take her clothes off. So we had the rule, like if you go outside, you have to have your clothes on. But if you come to the house, then you can take your clothes off. Fortunately, we were able to keep it where she'd keep her underwear on, but everything else would come off the minute she came in the door. Eating was an issue. I remember when she was 2, we were at a Mexican restaurant. Her older sister, Bob, and me, my husband and me, and I were at a restaurant. And our rule was we had to just taste things. And so we had her taste the Spanish rice, and she just threw up. And we didn't realize it was the texture. You know, there's something about the texture she couldn't take. And so she was very, very picky about what food she would eat. And we were so worried that she would, you know, wither away. But that was one of the things that one of the specialists told us, no, they get what they need. They'll eat what they need. Don't worry about that. And so we just always tried to have something that, what was that?
I was interjecting and asking, does she like Spanish rice now?
She does not. No.
Okay.
She does like white rice,
Yeah.
but she doesn't like Spanish rice.
Okay.
Macaroni and cheese and hot dogs were the things that she lived off. And corn dogs. She loved frozen corn dogs for some reason. Like, okay. Okay.
Some of the things that you mentioned to me are so common, you know, that I see all the time on my job. So, for example, you know, you were explaining how she would run and you had to put safety measures in place. My son, too, was a runner as well. And in our line of work, we call that eloping. And then the disrobing, she likes to take off her clothes. We have children in clinic that like to do that. And so we work with them on that because that's also very common. And then, of course, the flapping and the tiptoeing, walking out their toes, and the aversion to different types of foods is very common. And then, you know, having the lack of communication to be able to say things, and that is definitely the function for a lot of behaviors with our kiddos. And so it's just interesting hearing you speak of these things because a lot of these things are still very common. But back when you and I were sort of in the arena, when they were small, there wasn't a lot of awareness at that time.
Yes. And in public, oh my gosh, I got so many evil looks. Because where she would start screaming or tampering or even like when we had ended up putting one of I call them the leash. It was the children's leash.
The harness?
That.
Yes.
We didn't have a harness at that time. It was like on the wrist.
Oh,
so,
yes.
But,
yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you feel like, you know, with having her out in public and some of the experiences in those earlier years, did you feel like there was a stigma or did you feel misunderstood from others or was it just in certain environments that you felt that way?
Oh, anytime in public. And then I even lost some friends over it too. Like they didn't want her coming over. They thought she was too destructive. And so it's like, okay, well, you're not my friend anymore. Yeah.
Wow.
I had to be very selective, you know, and try to invite people over to our house to keep the environment safe for her or to go places where they felt comfortable with her being there. So it did. It had a big impact on us. Another symptom I forgot to mention is perseverating. She started drawing in the air with her finger, like drawing things, and she would do it over and over and over again. And one of the therapists that we saw recommended drawing. And so then she started perseverating with her drawing. And then she just loved art. And in fact, she did go to college and got her bachelor's degree in art. Still loves art. Something gives her great love and she has a passion for it and great enjoyment of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know, my son still does that, draws in the air.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that is another symptom, or rather, I guess you could say symptom. That's not really the word I want to use. But so let's go back just a little bit, if you don't mind. So I want to go back to the trying the foods. What age was she at this particular dinner setting?
She was 2.
Okay, okay. So you got her into school, and
Mm-hmm.
through a series of trial and error, so to speak.
Yes.
And she was with a good teacher that worked with her. How long was
Yes.
she in that particular program? Was it before you answer that, was it a self-contained room, or was it just a regular? The names have changed over the years. And
Yes.
what type of a setting was it? Was it in a school where there was a room
Yes.
where they had children with special needs, or was it
Yes.
a particular school for just special needs, if that makes any sense?
Yes, it does. It was at a regular elementary school, and they had a room set aside for people on the spectrum that was separate from the rest of the elementary school. So they had 2 classrooms for them, but for the preschool part, and it was only for these 6 children. And then they would alternate their playground time when the other children weren't out there.
Okay. Yeah.
So they had playground access, and the classroom was self-contained.
Okay. Okay. And how long was she in this particular program before you?
It was 1.5 to 2 years.
Okay.
And then at that time, my husband had changed jobs, and he was commuting over an hour each way. And we didn't want to move because she was thriving in that environment.
Mm-hmm.
But then she was going to be promoted. She was finishing that program, and she would need to go into a kindergarten class. And so we thought that would be a perfect time to transition. So we ended up moving closer to his work, and then going to the kindergarten at that in that area.
Okay. And
That was
you were still in California?
yes.
Okay.
They're both in Northern California. But my husband was willing to commute. So he didn't want to disrupt their learning. So I wanted to go back to something you're talking about, like the community involvement, involving Rosalind in community things. Something that really inspired me was reading about Temple Grandin. She was a woman who's an adult that went to college, got her master's degree, became an expert in animal production. And I was just so fascinated and excited and inspired that there was someone who was on the spectrum and had been so successful in so many ways. And so that really inspired me. And one of the things in reading the research at the time, they said that there's a window of opportunity in the brain that before a child turns 6, that the synapses grow and develop, and even if someone has brain damage, the brain is so wonderfully made, it can grow around the damage, and you can still have skills. And so they said the research I read at the time said there were 2 windows. One was at 6 and one was at 12. And then you have the most amount of time, a chance to grow the brain through age 6. And then the second time was through age 12. So as a family, we decided to really emphasize exposing her to as much stimulus as we could to increase her brain and her capabilities. And so we went to museums, we went to family activities, the park if we could, although she would try to bolt at the park. So with the stroller that worked, but trying to keep things safe, of course. But that we purposely went around trying to expose her to as many stimulus as possible. So just to get that brain going. Because, if you stay in the same routine, the same location, the same situation, then your brain it doesn't grow. And so that's what we did. We also were able to get music there. It was a student who was going to school to become a music therapist. And she was an older student. She was a young widow and going back to school. And she needed something to inspire her, keep her going on the general ed classes that were so boring for her. And we needed someone who could do music therapy with Rosalind. So she would come to our house free of charge. And we would reimburse her for mileage and buy her gifts from time to time. But it was against the policy or the music therapists in their organization to pay students. So we couldn't pay her. But it's like she did so much good with Rosalind. Rosalind was very interested in drums and music, things like that. So, singing. And so she helped her a lot in that area. So we got the music therapy to move with, or we had the music therapy and then movement therapy. And those two things helped so much in getting her more of this stimulus. And then I had a friend, as God would have it, that was going to get her massage license and she needed people to practice on. So I invited her over and she practiced on me. And Rosalind was so interested in that when my friend was done with my massage, Rosalind took her clothes off and jumped on the table for her massage.
Oh, wow.
And so my friend graciously came over once a week and would give her a massage. And Papa and I noticed after she had her massage, she was much more in tune with other people. Like you could just see a distinct difference. She wasn't off into her own Never Land. It was like all, she was interacting, having more eye contact, that kind of thing. And so, that happened for about a year. And that seemed to really help too during those early years.
Wow. And what age was she at that time?
4 to 5. Then what helped the most? Oh, sorry.
Oh, no. Go ahead.
So then when we moved closer to my husband's work, we decided we wanted to live out in the country, in part so that Rosalind could run and not be hit by a car.
Yeah.
And so we got 5 acres, but we couldn't afford the acres and the house. So we lived in a trailer, a 27-foot RV trailer. The 5 of us lived in that while we built a house. And so before that, we had a house in the suburbs. It was 1,800 square foot, 4-bedroom house. And then we moved to this 27-foot trailer. And then she had her annual appointment with the specialist for people on the spectrum, he looks at me and goes, this is a different child because she had improved so much with her skills. And so I explained her situation. He just starts laughing. He goes, I'm going to call this trailer therapy. Because she was forced to interact with everyone, where before she could hide in one of the rooms. But once we moved to the small trailer, she had to interact with everyone 24/7. So she did leaps and bounds in her improvement. That was when she was 7 and 8.
Mm-hmm.
Or 6 and 7, I guess. Yeah. 6 and 7. Yeah. So trailer therapy, that's what I recommend. that helped her.
That's amazing, though, that she just was, you were seeing that progress. Mm-hmm. So she was in this program for 2.5 years. Mm-hmm. What happened after that? You had to transition her into a different program, to a different school. What did that look like?
Yes. So then when we moved, we went to a city that had a reputation for being very strong on education. But it was a 20-minute drive from our house. So I'd have to drop her off at the special ed preschool. And then they started integrating her, the preschool. They were very into integrating with the general population. And so she was able to be integrated in the first grade. And so then she did special ed in kindergarten. And then during first grade was integrated. And then during second grade was integrated more. And then she needed to repeat second grade. And at that time, she wanted to go to the same school that her older sister was going to, which was our local elementary school. So then she repeated second grade, which was actually easy for her to do because she said in her mind she would have second grade at that one school and then her other second grade at the other school. So it seemed to work out for her. And then her youngest sister was starting preschool. And I started work. I wasn't able to work for a couple of years because Rosalind kept getting kicked out of daycare. So she wasn't able to stay in daycare. And so, but by that time, when she was going to school, then we were able to do some after school care at the same school. And I was able to go back to work.
Mm-hmm. So when you were unable to have daycare available, what were, are you able to shine some clarity on that? Just,
Well,
what that was like for you.
oh, yeah. So the first daycare, that was when the director told us it wasn't a good match for her. And that's what we had just moved to the greater San Francisco Bay Area. That's for my husband's work. And then I was working too. And then the, when when she wasn't able to go that daycare, I contacted a different daycare and took her there. And she was like, it was lasted about 2 weeks. And they said, we just can't have her. It's not safe for her or for the kids. And so then before that, we'd lived in the same area as both of the grandmothers. And so they neither one of them worked outside of the home. So they both took turns watching the kids, but that was an hour and a half away. So it's like, okay, this is not going to work. And so it's like, so I ended up just, and then by that time I was having the third child too. So it's like, okay, this is enough. I can't do this. And so I ended up just not working and just concentrating on learning therapies to work with Rosalind and just trying to, and we had to watch her 24/7 because it was unsafe to have the youngest child around her who couldn't defend herself. So it's like eyes on 24/7, you couldn't leave her in the room for a few minutes. So without, and then when Siwa started crawling, I remember so clearly, she started crawling away from me when she was about 7, 8 months old. Rosalind didn't think that was right. She thought babies need to be with their mom. So she picks her up by the neck and brings her to me. And so we were in a program in California. They have something called the regionals, and it was an ultra regional. It's put on by the state for people with disabilities to integrate into society. And so it's from birth until death. And so I contacted Ultra Regional and they sent a behaviorist out to our house and to teach Rosalind it's like, you can't stop the behavior. She's going to pick the baby up, but let's teach her the right way to pick the baby up. Exactly. And so the behaviors came out like 3, 4 times and we practiced with teddy bears and all that. So, trying to change that dangerous behavior. So anyway, we ended up like going into debt. It's, what can you do? It's like, you have 2 incomes. We just moved to a new house. It's like, you do what you can for your kids. But then so it was a relief when I was able to go back to work and bring some more income in. So that was really good. We were very grateful for her going to school and then the after school care that she was able to go to as well.
That's wonderful. And then, so was this the routine until she was about 14 and you moved to Washington?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. And so what was that transition like when you moved to Washington for your family of Roslyn?
We didn't know anyone in the state of Washington, so it was very difficult. But one thing that Rosalind hated was sharing a room with her younger sister, Siva. And so they would have a lot of fights and arguments. And so, but when we moved to Washington, she got her own room, the house that we rented when we got here had enough room. So she was absolutely thrilled about that. And we were able to bring all of our pets with us. And so that was important to her as well. So, and then also the school that she'd been going to, she was integrated at she was middle school. And I guess she was actually in the first year of high school when we moved. She was halfway through her freshman year of high school. And she hated one of her classes. And so for her, it was refreshing to go to Washington where she didn't have the same classes and she got her own room. So there were some definite positives. But one reason we ended up moving in the middle of the year is she actually got depressed and suicidal the first part of that year. And Bob was starting his job up here and I was still taking care of the kids. We thought we'd give him that school year and then move up afterwards. But had to fly down the middle of the week because we needed to do family counseling for her and get her on some medication and some intervention. She needed constant supervision. And so it's like, okay, we need to do this together. So I quit my job and we all moved to Washington and then Rosalind did seem to get better.
Do you feel like looking back on that time that hormones may have played a part in that part of her life?
It could be. I never thought about it. None of the doctors that she saw suggested that, but now that you mention it, it's like, maybe that could have been. I don't know.
Well, the reason I say that is because since I've been doing ABA, that is something that does come up quite often. And I don't know that because we saw a lot of changes with my son, during those times too. So it got me to thinking, because that's really when we started to have, far more negative behaviors, I should say, more maladaptive type behaviors. And so, and having worked with some clients and watching them transition when their bodies begin to change and they get a little harder, just like an atypical child. That that thought just came to me, and I just wondered, of course, we'll probably never know, but it sounds like the transition to Washington was helpful to kind of sort of get her out of that place and space, change of environment,
Yeah. It was.
Probably was very helpful. So when you got to Washington and she had her own room and her animals, what was schooling and what supports did you start to get involved in?
Well, one of the things with Rosalind, one of her big strengths is she's always wanted to fit in. And so even when she was in 3rd and 4th grade, there was an aide that was assigned to her classroom to help with 3 or 4 students who had special needs. And Rosalind never wanted to be the one that the aide helped. She would tell the aide, she'd point to someone else, say, help them. Because she didn't want to seem different. And so that really helped in her acclimating to things. And so the accommodations that she had in high school, we had IEP, she had a social skills class, and then her homework was adjusted for her because she was a perfectionist and she was on her writing would be very, very slow. And so and her reading, she has specific reading disabilities and reading comprehension. And so she would feel frustrated because she would have her homework and she would literally do 5 hours of homework if she were to do everything that was assigned during the day. And so we did homework modification where the teacher would say, okay, do this problem. These are kind of representative of that same theory or whatever. And then one of the modifications is if she had to write a story, she could dictate the story to me and I could type it for her. So those types of modifications. So she did the regular curriculum. And then with the social skills class that she had.
That's amazing that she was able to do the regular curriculum with
she's a smart girl.
Some resources put in place and some support, but that's wonderful. I was when she went to college, I was like, wow, just let her go. That blew me away.
She wanted to.
Yeah, so the fact that she even wanted to,
Yes. One of the things that really helped me when Rosalind was in school is becoming friends with her teachers. And then they would give me suggestions or ideas. And so one of the things at the high school they recommended is that there was a local program for 18 to 21-year-olds that is only good if they don't graduate from high school. So they said, well, let's have her not submit her final project so she doesn't graduate so that she could attend that extended care or extended program.
Yes.
And it was during that time that we decided together that her academic part would be going to college. And so she went to the social program for 3 days a week and then went to the college for 2 days. And so yeah, so that, and then during that time is also when she was able to get her driver's license. So she was able to drive herself to the college and such. That was a big deal.
Yeah.
And then I thought that she would just want to get an associate's degree or just stay at that one college. But I remember she turned to me one day and she said, "Mom, both of my sisters went away to college. I want to go away to college too." And, oh, okay. Well, let's see how we can do that.
Mhm. Mhm.
And she said she wanted the dorm experience and the whole thing. Okay. All right. So we went around and looked at colleges and she picked which one she wanted and it took her 8 years altogether. So she did 4 years at her community college and then another 4 years at her university and then got to get the bachelor's degree. That's the other thing that, thank you. That's the other thing that really helped me is somewhere along the way, one of the specialists I spoke to told me that don't be in a rush. They're gonna, if they get integrated when they're in second grade or they get integrated in their high school or college, it doesn't matter. We're not in a race.
Mhm.
And so just let them take their own time and they'll get to where they need to be eventually. And that was so inspiring to me. The other thing that really helped me was one of the fathers that I met at one of the parent groups that he had a child that was about 4 years older than Rosalind. I said, how do you deal with the family dynamics? How do you deal with things like just clipping their toenails and clipping their fingernails? It's so hard at 4 and 5, and because, you just get used to it. Your family kind of gets into a rhythm. You just kind of get used to things. And he says it gets easier when they're about 8 years old. And she was right. For Rosalind, that was exactly when things started clicking for her after the trailer therapy. And then just things got so much easier at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. What does she have her bachelor's in?
It's in art.
That's amazing.
Yeah, she's a talented artist.
That's wonderful. And what is Rosalind doing specifically right now in her life?
So Rosalind, just this last month, came back home. She was helping grandma out. Grandma is in her 80s and was having trouble with daily tasks. So Rosalind went to live with grandma for 7 or 8 months. Prior to that, she was working at an after school care program for 2 years. It was a nonprofit that did after school care in local elementary schools. And that it it was okay the first year, but then they added more children into the mix for the second year, and it became fairly unbearable for her at that point. So she was trying to make a change, and then grandma says, "Well, I need some help. Why don't you come help me?" So she did that, but then it got too much, the constant caring for someone else. So she's currently trying to calibrate and figure out what she's going to be doing next. She's currently applying for work. She's realized through these experiences she would like to work in a job that includes art. And so she's been actively applying for art jobs and also getting involved in local art groups. For example, there's a studio in Portland, we live near Portland, Oregon. And it's for people on the spectrum. And she took a class there and they're going to have open art studio this fall. And she's hoping to do that with them as well. So she's in a transition period trying to figure out what's next for her.
Yeah, that's just amazing. Just amazing. And I do hope that that program works out and it's a good fit and she enjoys it.
Yes.
And
She is amazing. She has such a good sense of humor. And she's just such a delight to be around. She's so patient and kind and just a real calming presence now. And yeah, so I'm so grateful that she's in our family. She does really great impersonations. She's just very funny.
what is something, looking back on the whole journey with Rosalind, what are some things that you would want professionals and educators to understand about girls on the spectrum?
Well, I think this applies to everyone on the spectrum, but the main thing that helped me, and I don't know if professionals have thought about this, but someone had mentioned to me that people on the spectrum emotionally are about 2/3 of their actual physical age. And so that really helped me when Rosalind was 17 years old and she's still interested in cartoons and things that I would think a preteen would be interested in. It's like, oh, okay, that's where she is emotionally. And that's totally fine. So it's like, okay, I'm not on the race and it's age appropriate for her to be interested in the Saturday morning cartoons or what have you. So it's like, it just gave me a different mindset. I was asking Rosalind the other day, I said, what do the educators do that was most helpful to you? And she said, adjusting how they taught things to the way that she could learn. Mm-hmm. She said that was the most helpful. So I'm thinking that just considering each child individually, like that one educator who was all animated when she spoke to Rosalind, but was deadpan when she spoke to another child, that, you have to be so individualized with these students. And then also something Rosalind mentioned to me the other day that she was really appreciative for what I do is she said that I asked her questions and that was really helpful. So a lot of times I'll say, so what do you feel like doing now? Or what are your goals in life? Or what would make you happy right now? And she said she was very appreciative for that way that I approached it. For girls in particular,
that was so amazing that she was able to communicate that to you.
Yes, she is.
That's huge.
It is. And I remember, crying when the first time she went to movement therapy and the therapist was explaining to me what Rosalind was meaning when she was saying things or doing things. I just started crying. It's like, finally, someone's able to tell me how to communicate with my child. Mm-hmm. And then for many years, I wasn't able to communicate. And I thought at the time, I would love to know what she was thinking when she said this or did that. And then when she became an adult, I was able to ask her, and I did ask her about specific things, and she was able to tell me what she was thinking. For example, she used to always say these weird words that were nonsensical, like something like squumpum or something like that. And she would say it over and over again. And so a little while ago, I asked her, I said, what did you mean when you were saying those words? She said, well, I heard everyone else talking to each other. And I wanted to join in, but I didn't know how to do that. So I just made sounds. Yeah, I know. But it's like she's able to describe that now. So patience, I think patience with these people, they'll get there in their own time.
Yes, they will. They do grow. And, my son as well, he did grow out of a lot of things. He's very calm now and he has a job. And so they do, grow into themselves and they take their own time. And he too, he likes to go and watch the Mufasa movies and he likes some of the younger entertainment. Another question I wanted to ask you is, what advice would you give to parents who feel overwhelmed or fearful even about the future with their child that's in the spectrum?
Well, one technique I used when Rosalind was younger, it was very overwhelming. But I would have autism-free days where, like, some days I would research autism and look up articles and try to work on the ABA or the play therapy or just, try to do things that would help her. But I had to schedule in days where I was free from all that and was just there to have fun with my kids. Mm-hmm. And so having regularly scheduled days like that was a game breaker for me. So I shared that idea with my sister who had some special needs kids too. And she's like, this is wonderful. That idea, just like you don't have to carry it every day. Just purposely take days off the issue that really, as best you can, keeping safety in mind, of course. And then also just really enjoying learning that every child is just so different and just learning how how to enjoy being with them. Like with Rosalind, she loves superhero movies even today. And so she and I went to $5 Tuesday night movies to watch Superman last week. And the other daughters came too, but it was so fun. Like these are things that I enjoy that I can do with her that she enjoys as well. So like finding those ways to connect and things that you both enjoy, that's so priceless.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Not, not demanding, but like encouraging and asking and realizing that the behavior is not going to change. I mean, still going to have that behavior. How can we turn it into a positive thing? Like Rosalind used to hit a lot when she was a child. And so then we got her some Nerf balls that she could use the same motion, but be throwing the balls instead of hitting. You know, things like that with the separating a drawing in the air, give her a pencil and she makes these beautiful drawings, on paper. And so like taking the same activity, but just changing it into something more productive or that's more socially acceptable or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. 100%. Yeah. I see that pretty often in working in ABA. Parents, they're not quite sure what the future is going to look like when they first get that diagnosis, or they're just starting out on this journey, and they're like, I don't know what to do.
I know. Yeah. One day, you have to do it one day at a time, just one day. If you worry too much about the future, you just have to enjoy your life now and just try to do one day at a time and try to enrich the environment as best you can. It's just one day at a time. For me, having a faith has been very, very helpful to me because I can just, turn it over to God. It's like, all right, God, you got this. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
But, you do try to make plans too that might be helpful. Like the current house that we have, we purposely bought it because it had downstairs basement. It's a daylight basement. And we thought, it'd be nice to have some extra room. And it turns out other family members have been able to use it as well. But that way Rosalind has her private space, is more independent. And, it's helped her be successful, be independent. And that was a family decision that we made. So it's helped other people too.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. What would you want people to know about Rosalind, and or how do you want to celebrate her?
Oh, Rosalind is delightful. She's a wonderful person to get to know. She is very quiet when you first meet her, but if you ask her questions, then she's always truthful and will answer as best she can. And I just love that about her. She has no deviousness or, she's just a very honest, pure person. I love that. Love that about her. So I think being honestly curious about people on the spectrum and not put off, is very helpful. And just sitting down one-on-one and letting, people on the spectrum are just like everyone. We just want to be recognized, known, and loved for who we are. As we are. Excuse me. So I think, extending that same quality to people on the spectrum that you would to all people who aren't is really, really crucial. But I guess holding on to something that gives you hope. Like for me, it was Temple Brandon. But if you find someone who has an older child on the spectrum, getting to know them, asking them questions, that can be really, really helpful and inspiring as well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. You had asked about girls on the spectrum, and when Rosalind was diagnosed, it was a 4-to-1 or 5-to-1 ratio as far as boys to girls on the spectrum. So I didn't really have any experience with other girls on the spectrum until Rosalind became an adult, and then I've met other grown women on the spectrum. But and then I haven't known anyone personally, women on the spectrum that have wanted to have romantic relationships. Mm-hmm. So I guess that's something that not to not to stress or, as a parent, to push for that. Which some parents might,
Yeah. I personally did not have any contact with any other females on the spectrum until I became an RBT. Rosalind was the only one. Everyone
Yeah.
I knew was male. But
Yeah.
once I started working in ABA, then I was exposed to more females. And it's still, the ratio is still higher with males. But yeah. The one thing I wanted to ask you too, just switching gears a little bit, is throughout all the years and even now, how were you able to self-care, you and your husband, and making your marriage a priority with these challenges and you personally, your own self-care?
Well, it's a challenge. I think for any parent, right? I think for me, it was trying to enjoy things with my children. That way I could parent and enjoy life at the same time. Having grace for myself, when I did make mistakes, just trying to be honest and say, oh, I guess I shouldn't have done that. I'm so sorry. And then, ask for forgiveness and go on for all of them. With Baldwin and me, we did what we could when she was young, when the kids were all really young. It's harder to get that time together. So we would do family activities, but every couple struggle. I think every family struggles with that. And then now, we're somewhat empty nesters. So, we try to, have date nights and even when the kids were in high school and stuff, and Rosalind, when we were able to leave, I know something we would do. The grandmothers, we would actually take them to the grandmothers to stay for a week or something. And then we could have time because that was any kind of safe environment. So even though it wasn't a daily babysitting, like if we could take them for a weekend or a week, that would work out well when we get some time away.
Rest it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Grandmas are amazing.
Yes. Yes. I agree. Grandmothers are lifesavers. That's for sure. And then trying to be in an environment where it's safe and they could entertain themselves and then we can talk. So like setting up our house where it would be Rosalind proof. And then, we could sit down and then have a conversation ourselves with her, doing whatever, just trying to set the environment up as safely as we could. And then if I have a friend I would meet, we'd go, at that time they had playgrounds at McDonald's. I don't know if they still do now, but we'd go to the McDonald's playground because the kids could go and play and then she and I could just chat and have adult time while they were playing, so.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And also too, just sort of still being under the self-care umbrella, your other daughters, were there things that they did to self-care? Because it's not always easy to be a sibling to a person on the spectrum. And so did your daughters have things that they did that helped them to be patient? And maybe it was messy. I'm sure it was probably messy. Ours was messy sometimes. It wasn't always the best sibling stuff a little later in the game. But what did that look like for your oldest and your youngest?
Because they're more aware of special needs and it made them more patient and more understanding. My youngest daughter said it made her a better teacher because she's able to explain things in a way that people can understand. My older daughter said she vied for attention because so much was focused on Rosalind, trying to get her the therapies and all that. So she feels like she had to fight for attention more than she would have normally. And then younger daughter, one of the things we did is we allowed the older daughter to have a room by herself instead of forcing her to share a room with the other non neurodivergent child. And so the two younger ones shared a room and there was constant fighting about that. So the younger one said, well, we fought a lot, but now they actually share the downstairs basement at this time in life and, as their apartment, and they actually do very well as roommates and they appreciate each other and work well live well together. So it's working out great now.
Yeah. now that they're adults and have some understanding too, and are able to put things in the right compartments.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Well, Ranene, I am so blessed by your journey and your story and sharing that with us. And it was heartfelt. And each of our stories is so unique unto itself, you know. And again, I'm so glad that you allowed for me to give you a platform because, again, I definitely consider you one of the trailblazers. And I've met some wonderful women in Washington that were trailblazers. They really were. And they were so instrumental in support in my journey as well. And I just want to thank you so much for who you are and what a blessing you've been to our family. And
thank you.
uh,
Well, I feel very honored that you asked me, and I asked Rosalind's permission if she minded if I talked to you about her story, and she said she did not mind. I asked her how she felt about it, and she said she felt honored that people wanted to hear about this story. So thank you for the opportunity to honor Rosalind.
but before we end this podcast, I did have one more question that,
yes,
how, if you could sum it up, how has your perspective changed over the years? From the time you got the diagnosis to now? That's probably a pretty big question.
Yeah. Well,
Go ahead.
The diagnosis changed me as a mother. I'm a very verbal person. I've always been very verbal. But after I went to the movement therapist with Rosalind, and she told me that Rosalind's motions were actually the way she was talking to me at that time, I became much more physical. And so prior to that, I wasn't really a hugger or just didn't do a lot of physical interactions. And then after that, now I am so physical and everyone knows me. I'm a hugger. And, you know, it's like, I just use my hand gestures a lot. I'm just very physical and how I interact with people. So that was a big change. Prior to the diagnosis, I also was judgmental. I'm sorry to say, like, I remember before I had children, I saw a parent dealing with a child who was tantruming. I'm thinking, oh, what a terrible mom. And then I get around the spectrum. I was like, oh my God, I didn't repent. I'm so sorry for thinking that. So it made me much more accepting of other people and realizing, you know, you never know what's going on. You just don't know. And what people are doing or not doing. And so it changed me in a big way as a person. It made me a lot more patient and a lot more attuned to what even like sensory needs that other people might be having, or even my own sensory needs. Yeah. So that's part of what I do for self-care too, is having time to meditate and to read and to try to take care of my own sensory, learning about sensory needs. So I guess the overall picture is to treat each person individually, and that I've also come to believe that we are all on the spectrum in some way, shape, or form. And so in realizing that part of me, they can get obsessive about things and perseverate and cherishing that and just realizing that, you know, that's all of us.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you have been one of those folks that has been instrumental, and just, you know, the very first time we met, you reached out to me and just came right up to me and just, you know, you were just warm from that day forward. I just want to honor you as a mom, as a sister in Christ, and as a wife and a daughter of the King. And may the Lord continue to strengthen and guide you and your family. And I just want to thank you so much for being with me today and letting us all into your sacred story. And just out of curiosity, is there any type of scripture you might want to share? If not, no pressure.
I do have this is my life verse, and this is the verse that got me through all of the hard times. I can do all things through Christ Jesus who strengthens me. Philippians 4:13.
Yes, touch and agree. I can do all things, and we definitely have to remember that daily. That
Yes. Yes.
we can do all things, and
So
something's under control.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
He called us to be the mothers to the children that He's given us, and that is such a big assignment. And what an honor that He would choose you for Ross,
Yes.
that He would choose
Absolutely.
Bob for Rosalind, that He would choose
Yes.
your daughters to be her sibling. And
Yes.
we mustn't take that lightly. And it's a kingdom assignment, really. And in some ways,
Yes.
when you spin it around, we might be their kingdom assignment. How to tolerate those
That is true.
typical parents.
Yes. Yes.
To give them
Absolutely.
breaks.
Yes, please.
Yes, we do. We as parents who have children on the spectrum, we need so much grace and mercy. And that is one of the things that I take into my line of work as well. And once parents begin to see that you've walked that road, it builds trust, and they see that you understand without even saying a word. And that blesses me, even though my job is really hard. It's a blessing to be able, that the road that you and I have both walked wasn't in vain. It really is a kingdom assignment on so many levels.
Yes.
And so
Yes, absolutely.
we just want to give the Lord glory for that, and pray that He continues to get the honor in our lives and in our children's lives as they grow and develop and change into different seasons and all of their endeavors as well. So
Thank you, Mary. Thank you for doing this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's my pleasure. And
I
feel so privileged, and I'm grateful. And so with that, as I say on every podcast, you are loved and valued and treasured, and there is always hope. Have a wonderful evening, and thank you again, Ranene, and good night to everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mary.
Now I've journeyed oh so far just to get right where you are, the root and the offspring of David, the bright and morning star. Though this cold road which I walked taught me to run to you, and you found me 'cause I was lost, but journeyed unto you. For all my battles you have fought, your word faithful and true. When it was comfort that I sought, my peace you did renew. Most of this cold road I walked, I was carried by you. Guide our talk and hearts and thoughts as we journey unto you. Jesus Christ, I thank you for all you brought me through. Help us to lead your children to journey unto you, and help us to lead all the children to journey unto you.